edition of the show, and that being the bi-week Blitz. Here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Of course, I'm your host, Dan Tortora, a.k.a. DT, and we have my co-host here with me, Mr. Isaac Alford, who has signed on to the team at Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora and Dan Tortora Broadcast Media. You can listen in and watch Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt, facebook.com/wakeupcalldt, facebook.com/livenowdt, and on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt, and on wakeupcalldt.com. So, with that being said, welcome into this very special broadcast of Wake Up Call inside of the bye-week Blitz, where Syracuse is off this week, and we'll discuss the season thus far, with Syracuse 1 win away from bowl eligibility with 3 games to go, at Louisville, at NC State, and home against Pittsburgh, and we'll get into the first college football playoff rankings of the season. Isaac, my throat was fine. My head was fine. I was relaxed until you showed up in the studios. And normally Isaac brings calmness, but he walked in here today with a match and done threw it right on my kerosene fire.
Yeah, what's happening with your voice, man? I mean, it's a little, I don't know. What's going on?
I don't know.
You're getting a little fired up there over there?
I'm getting a little fiery right now. My voice is anticipating it going away.
All right, take your time. Take your time.
So, happy to be here with you, Syracuse bye-week Blitz and the college football playoff. And so, starting with Syracuse, looking at where they are this season, they have made an effort to make this into a season again.
Yes.
There was a time where they were 3-1 in non-conference. Then they went 1-3 to start the ACC. Literally did a 180.
Right.
Was the reverse mirror image of itself. 3-1, 1-3 makes them 4-4, and now they're in a place where they're 5-4 and have an opportunity to only need to win 1 out of their next 3 games to become bowl eligible. How would you describe the current state of Syracuse football?
I think they're definitely in a place where they need to be. Again, like you said, just need one more win to reach that bowl eligibility. But actually, I really thought they probably maybe 1 or 2 wins shy than what I hoped they should be. You know, of course, there was some close games down the stretch where some of those games just got away. But they always were competitive. You know, they never were out of any of the games. That was the good thing about it. You saw a team with fight. They had the drive. You know, they never really gave up, you know, even though there was some questionable coaching calls in some of these games down those stretch. There was definitely, you know, moments where, you know, they had to make decisions on offense, you know, change the quarterback spot. Because if you would have came into the season and told me that Tommy DeVito would be in the transfer portal at this time,
yeah,
I don't know what that would just I couldn't predict that one, you know. But
I thought he would be in the transfer portal, but not during the season.
Right.
I thought it would have come before this season, if you know, coach was going to be more clear about, you know, Garrett Schrader being the starter.
Right. So, like I said, I think they probably are. They're in a good spot right now, but to me, I wish they they should have already been bowl eligible at this point, you know. But I mean, it's what it is. So you're gonna have to play it out, and you know, these last 3 games, you know, if they can go ahead and take care of business, their next game after this bye, you know, the next 2 are just, you know, icing on the cake. Let's go out and play and let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, you know, I think you're in control of your own destiny.
Yes.
You know, and I think that that's important to note that Syracuse has, I mean, they've been in this position before, and they haven't done a good job at controlling their own destiny. So, you know, I mean, there was a time where Syracuse defeated, at the time, number 2 ranked team in the country and reigning national champion Clemson. And there was the notion of, hey, how many games do they have left? And I was like, oh, like 5, and they have to win 2 of them. And the reaction that I got was, oh, well, that should be easy. I said, this is Syracuse. And, you know, I said, this is my hometown, and I love it, and love watching them, and respect them, and appreciate them. And at the same time, I said, as easy as it looks, it's not going to be that easy. And I wouldn't be surprised if they lose every game from here. And they went on that season to lose the rest of the season and ended the season 4-8 and shut themselves out of bowl eligibility. So, you know, it's one of those things where I said that's either going to be a season that goes down in history, or it's going to be a season of every squirrel gets a nut.
Right.
And that's what it ended up being. So Syracuse has been known to be in that situation and not handle business. This team, to me, is on the precipice of being different. They're on the precipice of changing the culture. You know, I mean, you think about it. Last season, 1-10, but you had Ifeatu Melifonwu, you had Trill Williams, you had Andre Sisco. Even for a little bit, you lose all those guys, and you're in a place where you're still potentially bowl eligible coming up here. You lose Eric Dungy a couple years ago, and you're still potentially bowl eligible right now. You know, you didn't have Abdul Adams and Jarvion Howard, then one of them decides to leave, and your top receiver decides to leave in Taj Harris, and you're still on the precipice of being bowl eligible. So with everything stacked against Syracuse, and for the last 2 seasons, you've spent time being the worst offensive line in the nation in sacks allowed. And now you still are in a place where you could be bowl eligible. So I think all of these questions pretty darn well. And so, you know, to me, I think that if they don't have your respect right now, you're not paying attention.
Exactly. You hit on some key points there. I mean, you went down the whole list of what were the issues that, or the worries that you would come into the season and think about how is this team going to overcome those issues. And at this point, I mean, yeah, it ain't perfect, but I mean, so far, to me, this is a team that's learning how to win. Out of that stretch where we've seen them just almost getting over the top, now you've seen a team with confidence and saying, okay, we know what it's going to take to win these games. And, you know, they're not going to back down for anybody. They're going to go out and give it their best. And, you know, now we're starting to see, like you say, a different change in the culture and stuff like that. People buying into what the coaching is saying and telling them, and they know, they'll tell the media after every game, you know, we still got a lot to learn. We still got a lot to go out there and improve on and correct mistakes that we're living out on the field. So definitely I like the direction they're heading. I mean, because at that stretch of 1-3 and back to 4-4, you could have easily put the head down in the dirt and said, oh, man, here we go again. But no, it definitely, they didn't see that in themselves, and they definitely are building something. Hopefully, if they can finish strong this season, you can see what the next couple of years may be.
Yeah, you know, and I think, you know, Josh Black, a defensive lineman, and offensive lineman, Aaron Service, I mean, they both said, listen, we came back as super seniors because we had a bad taste in our mouth. We weren't going to leave the team this way. So, you know, to have 5 wins, believe it or not, folks, to be 5-4, it's Syracuse with the amount of wins they have is 5 times better than what they did last year. You know, last year, 1 win, this year, 5. So they've already taken what they've done last year, plus 4, and made it better. And to have a winning record at this time in the season, uncharacteristic of Syracuse in recent history.
Right.
To win 2 games in a row this late in the season, uncharacteristic. To win 2 games in a row in the ACC, uncharacteristic. To hang with every ACC team that they play this year, folks, understand something. They defeated Virginia Tech at Virginia Tech, which Notre Dame almost didn't do. They defeated Boston College without an issue, where Boston College has done some good things under their new coaching staff, and they found ways to be not just a running team. So you take those 2 wins and say, okay, Boston College is not a bad team, regardless of the record. Virginia Tech is a tough team to play in Blacksburg. They're a tough team to play anywhere. And then you look at the fact that, I understand it's a down year for Clemson, but you lose to Clemson by 3, Wake Forest in a shootout in overtime by 3, Florida State on the road in Tallahassee where you've never won, you lose by 3. So Syracuse's entire ACC schedule, 2 wins and then 3 losses, each separated by a field goal. That's it. Nobody has blown out Syracuse. Nobody has embarrassed Syracuse. And Wake Forest comes into the first college football playoff rankings of the season at number 9 in the nation. And Syracuse pushed them to overtime.
Yeah. And that tell you what kind of talent, and the competition on the field, those guys, it took every bit of play calling and what you want to call it from the Wake staff to make sure they pull that game out. It wasn't just, like, oh, we're just going to go up to Syracuse and just put up 50, 60 on these guys. Definitely you can see the defense doing good things out there for Syracuse. And then the offense, they have their moments. Sean Tucker's is having an unbelievable season.
Yeah.
We haven't seen that in 10, 12 years in this area when you get that kind of production out of the running back position.
Just shy of a decade. Since the last 1,000-yard back.
Exactly.
Jerome Smith, 2012, 1171.
Yeah.
So just before the 10-year mark, Sean Tucker did it.
Mm-hmm.
Before, Sean Tucker prevented the statement of Syracuse hasn't had a 1,000-yard rusher in a decade.
Right.
He threw that out the window. So
and it's continuing to break other records. The consecutive 100-yard game streak he's on now that he set. So,
was it 7 now?
I think it's 7 now.
And the record was 6,
Yep,
and now he's got
6.
it to 7. So.
Yes. So, that just shows you how much, when you got a healthy O-line that can block for you and do all those things that they were lacking last season. And heck, he had a decent season last year. I think he rushed for like 600 yards before he went down with his injury. So, these guys, you just add some right pieces here and there, and if they can add a little bit more production in their wide receiver room, I think that'll even make them more special. Because right now Tucker and Schrader are doing what they can on the ground, and that's doing enough for to keep the defense guessing, if you will. But if you can just add that one little piece with either a tight end or the receiver or a couple receivers there, I can see they can get to that 6th win.
Yeah, Syracuse has definitely changed a lot of the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I look back at that Clemson game. And I look back at the Wake Forest game, and I look back at the fans leaving when they thought the game was over, and I look at a season that people thought was gone. Right. It was a wash, right? And to see what this team has done in that time period, really, folks, listen. In these last couple weeks, Syracuse went from you counted them out to now they are one away from counting themselves back in. They've resurrected themselves from the death that some of their own fan base gave them. And I spoke with Jason Simmons on the in the secondary, and I told you about this. He said we kind of know this season that there's that it's kind of us versus the fans,
right?
And to feel that way, I've thought that players felt. I thought that players saw fans leave. I thought they saw fans give up on them over the years. And I finally asked Austin Wilson a few years back about it, former quarterback, war number 5. And I said to Austin, it was nice that when you lost to Clemson, I saw this woman get up and she started clapping.
Mm-hmm.
And she was standing right here by this end zone. And then other people got up and started clapping. And even if it was 4, 5, 15 people, it was the first time I saw them clap, despite a loss and despite, people leaving.
Right.
And he looked at me and he goes, "It's about damn time."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Do you watch them leave? Do you see them leave?" And he said, "Of course we do." And then I've talked to other players about it, do you see them leave? And they said, "Yeah, we see them leave." And then to hear Jason Simmons say, "Hey, we know that, it's kind of been like the fans against us."
Mm-hmm.
So, I think, number one, it's disgraceful for they get enough crap when they go to Notre Dame, when they go to Florida State, when they go to Death Valley and Clemson, when they go to Duke, when they go to North Carolina, when they go to Pittsburgh, BC. They get enough. They don't need anybody else booing them. When their own fans walk out on them and their own fans boo them, with all due respect, it kind of makes...
feeling to have inside. That's just kind of... I'm not going to say human nature, but, you coaches got to make decisions, and then it's almost like the crowd just start booing just because they don't agree with... you got to understand 3 quarters left in the game just because we got to punt the ball in the first quarter.
Yeah.
It's not giving up on the points. I mean,
I would look at it and say it's 3-0, so they're not
Right.
getting blown out.
Right.
The game's still within reach. All you got to do is score 1 touchdown. There's a lot of ways to see that half full.
Right. And that's basically what it was, is the defense kept them into that game, kind of like Dino said at the end. We just needed the defense to hold Boston College enough to give our offense that one play where it was just a difference of, like you say, a touchdown, and hey, we're back on top. And that just spun the whole momentum around. So, yeah. But, yeah, I mean, you see fans do, and they get upset. And it's this, I call it the Madden culture, but you can't always go for it, on fourth down. I mean, me and you have that conversation. There's always time when, it's go
Wake
time
Forest,
now.
4th and 2, they're 27, go for it.
Fourth quarter, yeah.
4th and 1 or a 48-yard field goal, go for it.
Right.
So I'm going to fight those because I'm also the one that asked him the question on 4th and 8. Why didn't you go for it against Rutgers when you're on their 41 or 42-yard line? And he said, well, that's close to like a 4th and 10. I don't like those odds, but if it was 4th and 5 or shorter, then I'd feel more comfortable going for it.
Right.
Remember, he said that to me.
Right.
And then when he had 4th and 2 and 4th and 1, he didn't go for it.
Right.
Which makes me turn around and say, hey, you said this to me weeks ago, and I thought you should have went for it on 4th and 8 with 10 minutes to go because you're playing against a Rutgers team that had a 7-minute drive.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this going, you can't afford to be down to Rutgers, who's not doing a lot offensively, but you can't afford to be down and then have them take 7 minutes off the clock, and then you got 3 minutes to work with, 2 minutes, maybe no minutes. So that's my mentality. And then against Wake, 4th and 2 with Garrett Schrader and Sean Tucker on their 27.
Right.
And then 4th and 1, and you bring out Schmidt to kick a 48-yard field goal, and I'm sitting here going, you can't get a yard from Schrader, Chris Elmore, Sean Tucker. You have the leading running back in the nation in multiple categories. And you don't think he can get one measly yard. And that's when I said in that game, after that game ended, I put a post out and I said, Dino Babers, in my opinion, at the time, I said he doesn't trust his offense.
Right.
He doesn't trust them. Because he said, in the Rutgers game, I trust my defense. I thought we could stop them, whatever. But, so you trusted your defense, and you said if it was 4th and 5 or something like that, you would go for it, 4th and 2. But then you had that and you didn't go for it. When are you going to trust your offense? What I'm seeing with him now, and maybe this is him thinking, I got to save my job. Maybe this is him thinking, I've went so far in the other direction, I got to try. In my opinion, at Virginia Tech, when I saw him go for it on 4th down early in the first half or whatever, I'm thinking that he's thinking, I have to do this because I'm about to fall off the cliff.
Right.
So I have to do this. I have nothing to lose.
Right.
You know what I mean? So he goes for it, and it pays off. He trusts in his offense, and it pays off. He trusted in them against Boston College, and it paid off. The last couple of years, the defense has been great at times, really great, really good. Not real. I mean, last year they were above average. The year before that, they were above average. They did so much last year, just takeaways on takeaways. You're looking at the stat sheet going, 4 takeaways they lost, 5 takeaways, they allowed 30-some-odd points. They were an enigma because when you get 2, 3, 4, 5 takeaways, you win. Right? But the offense just didn't score. Now your offense has life, can score, can get in the 30s, can get in the 40s, and you don't trust them on 4th and short. I mean, come on. And
that's kind of the difference in this defense this year. How great they are, you don't see the takeaways this year, which is what it may be. I mean, that doesn't always going to be a surefire guarantee. You're always going to get those takeaways. But now, like you just said, you got an offense that can move the ball, that can do it on the ground. You don't necessarily always have to drop back and pass the ball. But, yeah, definitely, I think he's one of those coaches that kind of, he plays it by his feel. I know the numbers may look in their favor, but I don't know what it is, but it just, maybe he just have, like you said, too much trust in his defense. And then, but you have to look at, how many plays of my defense are out there on the field. Are we getting ready to give the ball back in just 3 or 4 plays back to our offense? Like you said, that's going to take 7, 8 minutes off a clock when you can't afford to do that when the defense is just on that field. So,
well, look at your team now.
yeah.
Your team has held the ball for half of a quarter almost.
Mm-hmm.
Your team has flipped the script. What Duke, what Liberty, what North Carolina, what all these teams did to them last year, Wake Forest, they're spinning it back on them, and you cannot condense a clock and frustrate a team, and you cannot put the squeeze on them like you can when you run the ball.
Yes.
When you run the ball, and I just heard somebody say, this former NFL player said this recently, I was listening to one of the shows, and I appreciated the fact that like somebody else was thinking on this wavelength as me, that he said the most debilitating, it was literally what we've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
He said the most debilitating thing, like demoralizing thing you can do to a defense, and he's a defensive player, he's like, is when somebody runs the ball on you and you can't stop.
Oh, yeah. When you know it's coming,
yeah,
and you can't do anything about it.
And last year, that it was Liberty, it was Duke, it was North. I mean, for goodness sake, Sam Howell, Heisman. I wouldn't put him in the top 50 when he played Syracuse the first game of the season last season. 60 yards at halftime. And then what do? They come out and they just give the ball to Javonte Williams. 3 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Liberty, run the ball. Duke, winless. And they just handed the ball off. That's all that they did. And Wake Forest, hand the ball off. I mean, this is how teams beat Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they beat them. And I'm sitting here going, dang it all. Don't you think that the thing that is beating the hell out of your defense, wouldn't it be great if your offense could do that? Because 2 things. If your offense can do that, now you're not being demoralized. If anything, if you're being demoralized on defense, you're giving it back, so maybe you can even it out. And if you have that type of rushing attack, your players in practice are going to go against it. They're going to be ready.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's twofold. You have that in practice, then you're now like, oh my God, these guys are so much better than us. And then in a game, if your butt gets pushed back, well, you're pushing their butt back.
Yeah.
But you're not taking 7 minutes off a clock, backing somebody down slowly, beating them to hell, there's nothing like, and I've said this for years and years, there's nothing like running the ball and what it does to systematically just, you know, it might take forever to get to the end zone, but guess what? By the time you got the ball, there was 10 minutes on the clock. Now there's 3:12. I mean, I've seen some of the drives Syracuse in the Dome this year, and I've looked at you going, you know, they had this ball at 13 minutes. There's 6 minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they literally just went like this. Here, good luck. You know, and if you take a team and you got 4 quarters and you give them the ball for a quarter and a half, Syracuse with Sean Tucker, with Garrett Schrader, is literally flipping the entire what's happened to them the last 2 years on other people, and they're now doing what was done to them. And again, condense the clock, demoralize, decapitate, debilitate, whatever you want to use, a team to back them slowly into their own end zone. You know, you have a 37-second drive, and you throw the ball over top somebody, and your receiver speeds down the field and scores. Yeah, you scored.
That's good. Yeah, that's good.
But you just gave the ball back to Clemson's offense, Florida State's offense, teams like that can score quickly and that have speed, that are built for speed. And so, to me, I'm thinking in my head, why would you want to be orange is the new fast against Miami, Florida State, Clemson? Why would you, North Carolina, Pittsburgh? Why would you want to quickly give the ball back? You know, I don't just want Syracuse to score. I want Syracuse to score and take time off the clock. And again, backing a team into an end zone slowly versus having them get beat on one play.
Right.
So you got one player that's gassed.
Right.
One player that's gassed. But if you take a 5-minute drive and you push them all the way into their own end zone, everybody's like feeling that.
Oh, yeah.
The DBs, the linebackers, the DNs, if everybody's got to take 2 steps back, 2 steps back, 2 steps back, that's not one guy running down the field going, crap, I missed him.
And that's what you just said is this offense now has that ability. How many times have we seen them maybe on a punt or a kickoff, the ball's inside the 10, and this team actually can take 11-play, 90-something yard drive, 6 minutes off the clock, and actually score.
Last 2 seasons, yeah. It's been they go from their 10 to their own 16 and punt it back 3 and out.
Right. And just like you said, the best part of this offense is watching Tuck and Schrader, like you say, grind it out.
Yeah.
And And even if you, like you said, you score quick, those teams like Clemson, Florida State, Boston College, they don't necessarily have to respond and score quick with you, because what they're going to do is they're going to grind your defense down.
Yeah.
And they know, okay, once we score, we're going to get it back in 3 more plays.
Yeah.
And we're going to grind them again.
And what did they do to What did they do to Syracuse's really good defense the last 2 seasons?
Mm-hmm.
They kept them on the Syracuse offense kept the Syracuse defense on the field for 3 quarters, 3.5 quarters, kept them on the field so long,
Right.
60%, 70%, 75% of the game, that as good as they were the last 2 years, you're human.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get gassed at some point. You're going to get beat on a play. I saw Jacksonville in the AFC Championship game a few years back with the Patriots, leading, and then they're just on the field. And the defense got tired, and a couple plays at the end of the game. And you got a linebacker chasing a receiver across the middle of the field. Brady sees he's got 3-4 yards of separation. It's a difference in the game. Yeah. So, as good as the defense was, the offense left him on the field too long. Mm-hmm. Now this defense doesn't have to be as good.
Right.
And what you want to do is you want to look at this defense and say, okay, we're not asking as much of you, but that means that doesn't mean you're going to slow it down and take the wheels off.
Right.
I'm not saying that Marlo Wax and Josh Black and Garrett Williams, I'm not saying these guys don't care at all, and I'm not saying they're taking it off. I'm just saying the focal point of this team was the defense. Mm-hmm. Now that the offense has gotten better, the defense has to still play. I guess the best way for me to say it to the defensive players at Syracuse is keep playing as if your offense sucks.
Right. And that's what I loved about this last game with BC was, in my heart, even though that first half, even in really the whole game, the strategy for me was watching BC offense. You got Flowers out there for BC. He's a deep threat. He's going to get his balls, and he did.
Yeah.
But the thing was, let's tackle him. Once the defense tackled him, and even if you was in the red zone, we wasn't breaking. It was like BC was just hoping to get a splash play and score off of it, instead of, okay, we got a big play. Oh, man, we got to run some other plays now. Because that's basically what Syracuse defense did the entire game, is when BC threatened them in the red zone, they didn't give up but 2 field goals, And that was the great thing about it, BC, they didn't really have a great offense, but they had that deep threat, kind of like the Taj Harris,
Yeah.
You try to hit that threat and hopefully he can score, but
they are the one-dimensional offense that Syracuse used to be.
Exactly. So, and that was, again, like, the defense doesn't have to be perfect, but when it was time to tighten it up and pay attention, they did everything they had to do in that game. And that was, that was the best thing that defensively they could have did for their offense, was keep them out of the end zone. And then once we got the ball back, hey, special team play, that played a big part in that and everything like that. And then let Tucker be Tucker. So, yeah.
And this game ends looking very fitting to what Syracuse has been this season. Sean Tucker, 51-yard touchdown run. Garrett Schrader breaks one for 48 yards. And Courtney Jackson, 64-yard punt return. And we know how good the team has been on punt returns with Trevor Pena and Courtney Jackson doing some good things. The first quarter, nothing. The second quarter, 3-0, BC. Third quarter, all the rest of the scoring comes in. BC gets 6. They go up 6-0. The game ends with 21 unanswered points by Syracuse that Boston College had no response to, and nothing in the fourth quarter. This may be a boring game for fans, but when your team scores 21 in one quarter and they're not answered, and you shut out Boston College for over 2 quarters.
Yes.
You shut out Boston College for over half the game. You don't allow their offense in the end zone one time. Like you said, they get in the red zone and they kick a field goal instead. So you don't allow touchdowns in the red zone. You don't allow a touchdown at all. You don't allow scoring for 2+ quarters. And you score 21 unanswered points. It may not look pretty. You may have been bored. But I'd rather Syracuse fans be bored than be sitting here going, another year that I'm going to have to watch everybody else play bowl games in December.
Exactly. There's a right way to win the games. Just
right.
Take that recipe you just spelled out. In that fourth quarter, I told you that I had that conversation with you. I said, if Dino gets into the fourth quarter with at least a 2-touchdown lead,
Yeah.
I don't care how much the mantra was, the orange is the new fast.
Yeah.
The orange is not a new run. In the fourth quarter, and I agree with that. That's just coaching experience. Try to keep the other team off the field, grind it out, and then, if your defense has to go back out there, they go back out there and hopefully hold again and give your ball back. And that was the same exact recipe when you just spoke about when Syracuse beat the number 2 ranked Clemson team. It was that season where I don't know what I guess in the beginning of that game, just trying to go back real quick, Syracuse was popping passes and catching Clemson defense out. All right, and I don't know what was going through the mind of Dabo, but it was almost like, well, we can do that too. Not giving the ball to their running game.
Yeah.
They just lost total control of that game, and then when it came down to that fourth quarter, Dino literally had them right where he wanted them in that formula. And I think Syracuse ran off the last 5 or 6 minutes of that game. And when Dungy got that key first down, that was basically it because Clemson was out of timeout. So, as you just mentioned, that's the recipe.
Yeah.
We flipped it on other teams this year. And that's how good this offense has been, not only for just running, but it kept the defense fresh. And those guys able to be out there to perform the whole, whatever minutes they're out there on the field. That's the great thing about it.
And that's what I said all last year, is why not use the medicine? Why don't you use what's been against you against them? Why not show them what they're showing you?
Right.
They're killing you and debilitating you on the run, so give it back to them. And you can't say, well, Dan, they couldn't do it last year. They didn't have the talent. They had Sean Tucker.
Right.
You had Tuck last year, and he was the only bright spot on a really bad team.
Mm-hmm.
And I say a really bad team overall, record-wise, individually good.
Right.
And that's what I said it came down to coaching. When you got a bunch of individuals that are good, but as a unit, they can't win, to me, that's a coaching issue. It's a scheming issue. It's a problematic thing from the top, because you think about it from a business standpoint. I got somebody who's really good at editing. I got someone really good at shooting video. I got somebody really good at running website. I got somebody really good at selling partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
Then why isn't my company successful?
Right.
If I have all my pieces and they're all good individually, then why aren't we collectively doing better?
Right.
Because if he can edit and she can sell sponsorship partnerships and this person can record my video well, and if I have all of that, then they should be selling the partnership, which we're recording the videos for, which we're editing and putting out a good product.
Right.
There's no reason why the hand shouldn't wash the other and we'd be winning. So when you have a Fatu Melifonwu, and you have Sean Tucker, and you have Garrett Williams, and who had the first pick 6 on Trevor Lawrence ever in college, and you have Trill Williams, and you have and Andre Sisco, and you have Michael Jones, and so on and so forth, and Josh Black, and Aaron Service. When you have all of that and you're not winning, that's saying something about coaching. This year, here's the difference. I said it at the beginning of the season. I said, take everybody's name out of this. This is not an attack on anybody, because I respect them all and their families. Tommy DeVito, Garrett Schrader. You could frickin' say Coca-Cola and Pepsi, whatever you want to call it. But you look at this and you say 112 carries for Tommy DeVito in 2019. 113 carries for Garrett Schrader in 2019. Almost the exact same amount of carries, separated by 1. 122 yards on 112 carries for DeVito. 587 for Garrett Schrader. 1.1 yards a carry, over 5 yards a carry. This is the guy that you need running this offense. This guy doesn't fit this offense. And it's not that Tommy's a bad player. It's not that he's a bad guy. It's not that he's undeserving. It's not that he sucks. It's not that he's all these hate things that people want to spew at him. And you should be ashamed of yourself if you're attacking somebody. Okay? Especially somebody. I don't even want to say somebody you don't even know. Don't attack people. You wouldn't want somebody to do it to you. And you can constructively criticize something. But I always think about it like this. When I'm constructively talking about a player, I need to talk about them like I would want them to talk about me as a broadcaster. If they thought that I should be better, how do I want them to speak about me?
Right, right.
So for Tommy DeVito and Garrett Schrader to literally look at them side by side and go, almost 600 yards, 5 yards a carry, 122 yards, 1.1 yards a carry, and they're carrying the ball the same amount of times. It was right in front of Dino's face.
Right.
And I don't know if it was Dino because Tommy was his guy. I don't know if it was him not wanting to admit that he was wrong. Or if, it was like, I have to prove that this works because I came here on this and I need to show this. I don't know what it was, but the fact of the matter is, it's okay to be driving saying, I think this is the way to go. And I think this is the way to go. And I think this is the way to go. But when there's a brick wall at the end of the road, are you going to drive into it because you still want to prove that this is the way? Or are you going to slow down and turn? And Dino finally slowed down and turned the damn corner. And thank goodness he did, because Garrett Schrader is sitting there going, y'all want to run? You want to be multiple? Your offensive line is breaking down, and you need someone who can get out of the pocket quick, make a fast decision, and can use his feet. And you have a really good running back that you might be concerned people are going to stack the box against. So I'm going to take pressure off of him. He's going to take pressure off of me. I'm an emergency. He's an emergency. We can get out of the pocket. I told you at the beginning of the season, logic was staring everybody in the face. And I'm sitting here going, how many weeks until you go, you know what? Why don't I just do the thing that maybe admits that I was wrong? But is it? Because if you go to a bowl game, you think fans really care which quarterback you originally had?
Right. No, and I think it's something in coaches, like you say, he bought in his guy, and it might have been a little loyalty.
Would you like some M&Ms?
No, I'm good. I appreciate it. But I think it was a little loyalty, trying to maybe give Tommy that last chance to see what he could prove. Maybe I'm pretty sure they sat down and had, as he say, the talks, and try to break it down and see where they're at. But I also kind of think about the Trevor Lawrence and Kelly Bryant situation. Where it was almost like where Kelly had the starting position coming in, and Dabo was like, all right, let's see what you got. Then when it really hit the fan, it's like, okay, I got this guy here.
Yeah.
That he checks all the boxes. I can't risk not playing him. And that's kind of what Garrett is.
And what would you want Dabo to do?
Right.
At that point in the season, he had a shot of not only going to a bowl game, but going to the college football playoff.
Right.
So is he supposed to go, well, this is my guy.
Right.
And I committed to this guy. I mean,
it's competition, man. It's all about competition.
Right.
And there shouldn't be no ill will amongst players
it's
or whatever.
A team sport.
Exactly. It's the best should play. You
right.
know, it's not, okay, I owe you or I promise you this and that. No, you come to a school and the coach's job is to find somebody better than you to put you in competition with, and it's your job to maintain that position and that job. I mean, if you don't learn it in college, you're surely going to learn it in the NFL once you get to that next level. So, he had to make that decision, and thank God, like you said, he made that decision, because now we're sitting at 5-4 and a chance. And I think his offense, like you said, this offense definitely, you need that balance, because without that, Tuck probably wouldn't be able to get what he's getting on the ground, because even Boston College, on that 48-yard run that Schrader got, it was literally a read option where both the DN crashed down on Tuck, and the whole building the breath went out because they thought Tuck had the ball and lost 3 yards.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh. And then all of a sudden you looked up and Schrader's running around the end, scoring a touchdown, and it was jubilation and stuff. So those guys definitely play off each other. And the more they kind of get in rhythm with each other, kind of read that mesh point.
Yeah.
I think, they're going to definitely keep the linebackers guessing who has the ball. And, and eventually, again, that's that grind. You're like, oh, man, we just made that play. But no, the guy got the ball. He's running 20, 40 yards down the field. So,
well, what? I want that picture of Tucker pointing to Schrader and Schrader pointing to him. Mm-hmm. Like, you got it, I got it. You got it, you got it.
Right,
I got you, you got me.
Right.
I got you. Because how do you beat a team where your quarterback runs for 5, 6, 7, 8 yards a carry and your running back runs for 8 yards? You know what I mean? Like, how do you beat a team that has that? Those are good teams. Mm-hmm. And I just asked you this question because, again, it's not a Tommy DeVito, Garrett Schrader. It's who is performing at a point that gives this team the best opportunity to win. And it's so hard for me to say because I love Tommy DeVito's family. You know, I've talked to Tommy from beginning until now getting recruited. And at the same time, if I was sitting there, I would go, hey, you know what? Garrett gives us a better shot to win. This is my only question to you. Take the names out of it. Call Tommy Bob Smith. Call Garrett Schrader Steve Williams. Okay? How about this? Just for argument's sake. Because I'm not comparing them to these two guys. But what would the Patriots be if they sat Tom Brady when Drew Bledsoe came back from injury?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Performance speaks all. You know?
Right. So, I mean, you look at what Schrader's been able to do, and you look at what Tucker's been able to do. Schrader ends the game 4.9 yards a carry, 78 yards on the ground. Tucker, 207 yards, 26 carries, 8 yards a carry. How about this for some Syracuse? 5 catches, 47 runs, and they win by 15. They run the ball almost 50 times to 5 receptions. They attempt 47. They attempt 14 passes. You attempted almost 5 times the amount of runs that you did passes. And people look at the stat going, just like the first game Schrader started, he was 6 for 15? And he's our quarterback? He runs. When Dungy was your quarterback, you didn't care if he kicked it to himself.
Right.
So the reality of it all is, as I told you before, I don't care about the stats. Garrett Schrader could be 5 for 72. But if he has 100 yards on the ground and you win by 15, do a little bit of this and a little more of this.
Exactly.
Because Garrett Schrader is not here to be your Aaron Rodgers 21 for 40, 21 for 29 for 372 yards, because you've had that before. Guess what, folks? Newsflash. You've had Tommy DeVito get 200-yard games passing, and the team lost.
Exactly.
I've seen stat lines where I've gone, oh, damn, 2019, it's the best year for Tommy, just under 3,000 yards. And your team went 5-7, right? And you didn't make a bowl game. So the reality of it all to me is, stop looking at the stat sheet and start looking at the talent. Because around the country, people are going, this Garrett Schrader guy ain't half bad. This Garrett Schrader guy makes sense if he was on Florida State running against Syracuse. This Garrett Schrader guy looks better than when Chase Bryce lumbered himself against Syracuse in Death Valley and embarrassed them as a third-string quarterback behind Kelly Bryant and Trevor Lawrence. Garrett Schrader, this is one of my best compliments to Garrett Schrader. He looks like the quarterbacks they used to beat the hell out of Syracuse in the ACC. It looks like he put on the wrong jersey.
Yeah.
And you know what? You should be thanking your lucky stars that he wore orange. And I asked him about that. And at the beginning of the season before he played a game, and he said, you know, I'm still getting into the color. I don't think it looks good on me. It probably looks good on some other people better than it looks on me.
Right.
I'm going to say something, Garrett. That color looks better on you at the quarterback position than anybody in the last 2 decades, except for the man that I love so dearly, Mr. Eric Dungy. And I don't want to compare the two of them because they run different, they feel different. I'm going to tell you this. You got 2 quarterbacks that are multiple. You got 2 quarterbacks that can run. But please stop comparing Garrett Schrader to Eric Dungy. I want Garrett Schrader to be the best Garrett Schrader he can be because Eric Dungy was not Donovan McNabb. He was Eric Dungy, and I love him for that.
Oh, yeah. And not without even comparing them, but I definitely can see Schrader growing in this offense in another 1 or 2 years. He's just, again,
He's a sophomore.
How young is this guy experience-wise,
Right.
you know?
And he played in the SEC.
Right. So,
I don't care if it was 1 year. None of the Syracuse players that are on the team played in the SEC. He played in the SEC. He played at Mississippi State. He won a rivalry game in the state of Mississippi. This young man was not the starter for the whole season. He was off and on utilized, and he still had almost 600 yards on the ground, averaging over 5 yards a carry. Garrett Schrader, in his initiation to college football, statistically looked good. And now at Syracuse, this is him as a sophomore, and you got him for junior season, and you got him for senior season, arguably. So you got 3 years of a guy who can, I believe, at minimum, if everybody does their job, at minimum, I believe Garrett Trader can get you to 6-6 every year.
Yeah, easy. That should be the standard.
That should be your friggin' minimum.
And right now, with the production, with him even not starting the season, I think he's approaching some QB rushing records already, just in the little time that he's played. Both him and Sean are on path right now to eclipse some single season records within the Syracuse uniforms.
I just love it. He went 5 for 14, and I'm like, he's thrown for over 1,000 yards this season, and rushing wise,
I think he's behind Cunningham out of Louisville in the conference right now for total touchdowns.
Yeah. So how about this? How about this, folks? 670 rushing yards, 1,119 passing yards. So from scrimmage, he has just shy of 1,800 yards, almost 2,000 yards, 7 passing touchdowns, 13 rushing touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 20 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. That's what this man has right now. Well, he's 51.2% completion percentage. Yeah, and he's 5.6 yards per carry. It's like pick your poison.
Right.
You know what I mean? And by the way, folks, I dare you to find me in America 10 quarterbacks that are throwing 65 to 70% and rushing for over 600 yards.
Exactly. You don't find those are rare. You know.
Yeah. Even Pat Mahomes is struggling right now.
Exactly. So,
Pat Mahomes beat the Giants by 3. Like, what is this world coming to when the Chiefs are celebrating a win that they squeaked out against the Giants?
But that's the key. As long as you win, baby, don't care how you get it done. Just win.
Like I said, nobody's going to give a poop about the fact that no one's going to look back at Wake's record and go, oh, well, they only beat Syracuse by 3. They won.
Exactly.
If Wake goes undefeated, guess what?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about they went to overtime. You know.
Right. Right, because do you go back on that? When Syracuse wins 25 games for men's basketball. And, okay, how about this? When Syracuse makes the Sweet, when last year they make a run in the NCAA tournament, is everybody going, oh, they had 18 wins, 19 wins? No, you're going, this is a Sweet 16 team.
Exactly.
You forget the sins of old when you advance. Right? Survive and advance. People forget that. People forget that Georgia in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, which I was there for, the 2 best teams in the country right now, which the AP and the coaches poll have, but the college football playoff has to create their rankings in order for them to mathematically make sure that Cincinnati doesn't make it. We'll talk about that in a second, because I'm about to give a very figurative TKO. But Georgia played Cincinnati last year or at the beginning of this year in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl at the end of last season. People forget. Because, again, all you care about is a win. What does Georgia say? We won the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Right. We won a New Year's Six Bowl. Guess what? They won that bowl game, taking control of the game in the last 2 possessions of the game. Not in the first quarter, not in the second quarter, not in the third quarter. It took the last 2 possessions of the game for them to win by a field goal. Georgia needed their kicker to come through to squeak by Cincinnati.
Right.
But what do people remember? Georgia won.
Exactly. And then they don't give that program no respect that they earn on the stage of taking the team down to the wire. So, yeah, exactly. You forget that.
Right.
In the end, it's all about the W's.
Would you care right now if Syracuse was 9-0? Would you care that they went to overtime against somebody? Would you care that they barely beat Villanova? Would you care that, like Boston College was without like 9 of their starters and it was a game? No. All you care about is that they won. Do you remember anything about the 10-3 season other than the fact that the team went to a bowl game, they won 10 games, they set a bunch of records they hadn't set in like a decade, 2 decades? Nobody cares about those 3 losses. Nobody cares about how the 10 wins came. Everybody just looks back at that season as the best Syracuse season in 20 years. Nobody cares about how close the games were.
Right.
I bet you most of the fans can't even tell me who played them close.
Right.
All the fans remember is 10 wins, Orlando, bowl victory, old rival West Virginia. Dungy cried. Your boy made him. Didn't mean to. Asked him a question. It's right there. But I asked him because I asked him about 4 years. I asked him about everything he's dealt with.
Right.
Fans hating him.
Mm-hmm.
People all over the country. He's not. And look at what he did. This man was 4 wins. 4 wins. 3, 4, 5 wins. That's all his teams were. He won in the last possible moment. He is the 11th hour hero.
Mm-hmm.
But does anybody remember what happened in those 13 games? No.
Right.
They just remember 10-3, and they might remember West Virginia.
Especially the casual fans. Now, the diehards might remember. And
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they do because they cherish those moments.
Yeah.
But to the average casual fan, you're right. They don't.
What I'm trying to say is that people are not looking at the 10-3 season asking for answers.
Or dissecting each problem that was in that season. Once you win washes away all the sins, like you say. So.
And Sean Tucker, with 1,267 yards and 3 games to go, has not only become the first Syracuse running back to get 1,000 yards on the ground from scrimmage in a season in almost a decade, last done by Jerome Smith once again, 1,171 yards on the ground, but he's already passed the 1,171 with 3 games to go and a potential bowl game. Sean Tucker could become a 2,000-yard back this season. Could become a 2,000-yard. Don't count him out, because he is, at this point, he's what? So he's got about almost 1,300. So he's 733 yards away.
Yeah.
733 yards away in 3 games.
Right.
Okay? So let's do the math here. 733 yards.
You definitely have to put on the same little performance he just put on.
So he's got to have over 200 yards, right?
Right.
But he's close.
And that's 3 games. And if you, God forbid, not forbid, but God willing, they get their extra win.
Right.
They get eligible for bowl. That's an extra game.
He's got to have 180 each game. All I'm trying to say to you is there's a good chance that Sean Tucker's already passed Jerome Smith. So not only is he the first back to do it in almost 10 years, but he passed Jerome Smith in 2012 what he did in the season. And he's averaging 6.3 yards a carry. And he has double-digit touchdowns. And when they played Clemson, he was 2 touchdowns shy of being their entire offensive production at the point. And all-purpose yards. At this point, all-purpose yards, rushing and receiving. Sean Tucker right now is over 1,500. So he has a very good chance of getting a 2,000 all-purpose.
Right. I can easily see that,
Yeah. So, going into the bye week, 12 total touchdowns, and he's the second leading receiver in yards on the team, behind only Courtney Jackson. He's got 238. You put all this together, and I'm going to do the fun math for you. 1,505 yards all-purpose at this point, and 12 touchdowns with 3 games to go.
Yeah.
If he was playing in the NFL right now, this man would be a fantasy machine.
Right.
If this man was playing in the NFL right now, he would be up for Offensive Player of the Year.
Right. And he definitely is in that conversation with ACC Player of the Year, first team All-ACC. He's on the Maxwell watch list. He's definitely checking those boxes.
The only the first back to get to 1,000 yards in the entire country. Ladies and gentlemen, you remember a guy named Ernie Davis? Well, if Sean Tucker's leading the country, he should be in your Heisman group.
Exactly.
And I don't really care what team he plays for. If he's leading the country, he should be in your Heisman group. Because if he was at Oklahoma or Ohio State or Alabama or Florida or Notre Dame, they'd be talking about him every 5 seconds as a top 3, top 5 finalist.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's how important he is to his team. So.
And you've given the Heisman to people that... You've given the Heisman to a few people that I would love to put up against Sean Tucker.
Right.
So, with that being said, any final notes with 3 games to go for Syracuse before we jump into what you've been waiting for all night, which is me to unleash my unleash my thoughts and feelings on the college football.
I know how strongly you love the rankings, but nah, just in the bye week, just the guys that get back into the training room, get their bodies right, get back healthy on the field.
Get that spray that they use in the MLS and
yeah.
in the World Cup for Aaron service.
Yeah, get all that stuff. Whatever they can get their hands onto it legally, Just get themselves right, because this next 3-game stretch, I think, is going to be a fun stretch to watch to see where they do. I think even going back, because, like coaches always say, the bye week is the time to break the team down, to look at where we're at. Hopefully they can learn some more things and maybe tweak these last 3 games and bring something to the table that some other teams, they may come and say, aha, we see you this. We are that. Yes, that's our identity. But guess what?
Yeah.
We're this too. So.
And we can't tell any of the 3 teams that they're playing any of the things that could still be in the playbook because we're not allowed to practice.
Exactly.
So it's not like you're going to read about it.
Right. So definitely with this Louisville game coming up, because Louisville, they just played a tough game. Now they got to play Clemson. And now you're going to have Syracuse coming right off the heels of a Clemson game. So I really say this is the time to attack for a Syracuse team, get yourself healthy, and, hey, let's get this win now. There's no time to wait,
You've been in every game in the ACC. You're 2-3, but you very easily could have been 5-0.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it was coaching choices. Some of it was just, Marlo Wax thinking that Jordan Travis was out of bounds.
Right.
So, and I don't bring that up, Marlo, to knock him down.
Right.
It's just
plays happen,
Plays happen. Coaching decisions that maybe you want to change, hindsight 2020 happen. That field goal goes through and they go to overtime against Clemson. Maybe people aren't as mad at Dino.
Right.
So, you look at this season and you say to yourself, Syracuse is 2-3 in the ACC. Louisville is 2-3 in the ACC. Syracuse is 5-4 overall. Louisville is 4-4. NC State is 6-2. They have one more win than Syracuse overall. They're 3-1 in the ACC. Pitt has one more win than Syracuse at 6-2. They're 3-1 in the ACC. These teams that you're playing right now are either bowl eligible or potentially going to be bowl eligible. They're 3 difficult games. But the way that I look at this is, if I'm a Syracuse player, and this is not coach speak, because in life itself, you have to let things go. Your current girlfriend is not responsible for what the other girls did to you.
Mm.
Your current boss is not a bad boss because your other bosses were bad. Your vacation you're on right now isn't a bad vacation because the other vacation it rained the whole time. You cannot compare your todays with your yesterdays, or else you're going to always be living in yesterday. You got 3 shots to win 1 game. You take care of it the first time, the rest of the season you can play more free and it's gravy.
Mm-hmm.
But you got 3 shots to win 1 game. You're 0-0. You haven't played Louisville at all this season, so you're 0-0 against them. Haven't played NC State, so you're 0-0 against them. Haven't played Pitt, so you're 0-0 against them. 3 shots to win 1 game. That's all you have to do. Take care of your business, and you got 3 chances to become bowl eligible. I like their odds. Now they have to play as if they have nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Exactly. Just leave it all out on the field. That's all we can ask.
How about this? I want every single player on offense, defense, and special teams to play like Sean Tucker.
Mm-hmm.
Then you'd be 12-0. So with that being said, it's time for us to jump into college football playoff rankings.
Oh, no.
The rankings have come out.
Yes.
It's the first ranking of the season. And in this bye week, in this bye week Blitz special, brought to you here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios, with myself, DT, and Isaac Alford. This is your college football playoff ranking. And I'm going to go 1 to 25. Number 1, Georgia. 2, Alabama. 3, Michigan State. 4, Oregon. 5, Ohio State. 6, Cincinnati. 7, Michigan. 8, Oklahoma. 9, Wake Forest. 10, Notre Dame. followed by Oklahoma State, Baylor, Auburn, Texas A&M, BYU, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Kentucky, NC State, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, who used to be the number 2 team in the country, Fresno State, San Diego State, and Pittsburgh. We will break this down as we go.
Mm-hmm.
But we can start things off by saying that Isaac and I are not going to argue that the best team in the country, I didn't think this in the beginning of the season, but they have pushed me to believe it. I don't think we're going to fight that Georgia should be number 1.
Yeah, defensively, Georgia got the is going to stop most teams out there with just defenses alone. Offense, they probably got some work to do to get to a championship level the way they probably want to be, to make sure they secure a national title. But yeah, there's definitely no argument in Georgia being number 1.
No, in the SEC, 7 teams in the initial college football top 25, college football playoff rankings, 7 teams in the top 25. Is the SEC deserving of having Georgia, Alabama, Auburn, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Kentucky, all ranked in your opinion? Should all of these teams be in here? And should they be where they are? Or what are your thoughts on the 7 teams?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if all 7 teams really need to be exactly where they are. There are some teams in the early season that kind of took some hits that, if you're going to be a contender for this college playoff, you had to come out in a better shape than what they came out of the gates and lost some games that they should have been a little bit more competitive in. But
yeah,
even the Big Ten, I was just trying to look real quick to see how many teams are in the Big Ten that's in the top 25. It's almost like you said, we was talking, it's the SEC Big Ten rankings, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to see some other power conferences.
6 teams in the Big Ten.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying is, there should be some other teams.
Wisconsin's 5-3. Like, I'm sorry, but they're 5-3. And no offense, but who's afraid of the Big Ten this year?
Right.
Michigan beat unranked, and then they lost to Michigan State.
Exactly.
Who was ranked in the nation's top 10, who played all unranked. When Michigan played Michigan State, everyone's going, this is a rivalry game. 2 top 10 teams. They were 2 top 10 teams that beat unranked teams. Between the 2 of them, they had defeated no one ranked.
And let that been any other conference, the crowd would have been dumping on them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
UCF versus Cincinnati.
Right.
Okay, what do you say about them? Well, you can't put, what do you say about UCF? Well, what do they say all the time? Can't put them in the college football playoff. Why? Because they beat a bunch of unranked teams.
Exactly.
Michigan, okay, you know what? Let's just have fun with it. Let's just have fun with it for a second here, folks. I want to get to Wisconsin for a second before I jump off this point, because Wisconsin, one of those teams that every single year, I can't understand why I just don't get it. Like, besides the fact that it's like, George Lopez, when he wanted food and he walked out of the room and he goes, save me some. Like, that's exactly how I feel about this.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like somebody's always saving. Like, you go to sit down in the cafeteria and Ohio State's going, that seat's safe for Wisconsin.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Look at this is Wisconsin's season. Penn State ranked number 19 in the country. Lost to them. Eastern Michigan beat them. Notre Dame lost to them almost by 30. Michigan lost to them by 21. Illinois, unranked, beat them 24-0. Army beat them 20-14. Beat a ranked Purdue, who was barely ranked at 25, 30-13, and beat Iowa, who was ranked in the top 10 at the time, 27-7. But the committee doesn't think that highly of Iowa and threw them all the way down into the 20s. So I'm looking at this going, what did Wisconsin do? You lost to 3 ranked teams, and you beat 3. I mean, what is it? You lost to 3 ranked teams, and you beat 2 ranked teams.
2 ranked teams, exactly.
Okay. So 5-3 UCF would be ranked 51st in the college football playoff rankings. So now let's look at Michigan. Because Michigan, and listen, folks, this is not because you're Michigan. Okay? To the College Football Playoff Committee, it is because you're Michigan. And the guy that's at the head of the committee, Gary Barta, I'm going to say something about him. He's connected to Iowa, who's in the Big Ten. And let me just paint this picture for you. He has ties to the Big Ten, and the Big Ten always seems to be taken care of. The Big Ten's always ranked high. And again, this isn't me against Gary. This isn't me trying to say to Gary Barta he could be anybody.
Right.
Could be any man, woman, or child. But you have a connection to the Big Ten, and the Big Ten's always protected. Coincidence? I think not. Michigan last season was put into the top 25 for 3 weeks before they played a game. Ranked in the nation's top 25 at 0-0. When Cincinnati and UCF are playing trying to win games, Michigan is ranked. Michigan went up 3 to 4 spots in 1 week at 0-0. Ohio State entered the top 25 last year having not played a game because the Big Ten waited because it was about safety and not about the money. BS. You saw everybody go to the party. You went on Snapchat and saw everybody having a good time, so you got a keg and you came to the party.
Exactly.
Ohio State was in the nation's top 10, top 6 without playing a game. And Dabo said something about that. And what do people say? Well, Dabo got his because Ohio State beat him. Ohio State beat him in a head-to-head game. Congratulations to Ohio State. But that game should have never happened because they never should have been there. Because they didn't play enough games. And let me be real with you. They weren't supposed to be in the Big Ten championship, and the rules were put in place. When Ohio State had a chance, they changed the rules mid-season.
Exactly.
And in order to make sure that all of Ohio State's players were healthy for the college football playoff, they changed the rules to make sure they had enough time to come off the COVID list. So if you got a team that you changed the rules for twice, they're not doing that for Cincinnati. They're not doing that for UCF. They're not doing that for BYU. They're not doing that for Boise State. They're not doing that for Coastal Carolina. They're not doing that for Appalachian State. So just call it what it is. This is who Michigan played this year. Western Michigan, not ranked. Washington, not ranked. Northern Illinois, not ranked. Rutgers, not ranked, barely beat them. Wisconsin at the time, not ranked. Nebraska, barely won by a field goal at the end of the game. I was watching that game, not ranked. Northwestern, not ranked. And you lost to the only ranked team that you played, which was Michigan State, in a shootout.
But yet you find yourself number 7.
But you find yourself number 7, 1 behind Cincinnati, who beat Notre Dame. And Notre Dame is 4 behind Cincinnati. Now let's look at Michigan State. Michigan State is considered the 3rd best team in the nation. What do they think, Tom Izzo's coaching this football team? Michigan State, Northwestern, unranked. Youngstown State, unranked. Miami was ranked at the time. That was a mistake.
Yeah.
Nebraska, unranked. Western Kentucky, unranked. Rutgers, unranked. Indiana, unranked. And then you beat ranked Michigan. You got 2 unranked teams, and the only win that Michigan State has against a ranked team is against Michigan, who shouldn't have been ranked that high because they didn't play anybody. And Michigan's only loss is to a ranked team that should have been ranked, that shouldn't have been ranked that high. So you can't even say Michigan State beat a top 10 team because Michigan isn't a top 10 team.
Yeah, they haven't even proved themselves to be up that high.
Right. Anybody else,
any other conference wouldn't even got that consideration.
The Pac-12 doesn't get that from the College Football Playoff Committee. The Big 12 doesn't get that from the College Football Playoff Committee, unless you're Oklahoma. The American Athletic doesn't get that at all. The Sun Belt doesn't get it. Conference USA doesn't get it. None of these conferences get it. If this was the American Athletic and they play, and it was Cincinnati and they beat East Carolina unranked, Navy unranked, Tulsa unranked, Tulane unranked, blah, blah, unranked, you would be saying they didn't play anybody worth merit and they don't have anybody in the top 25, so therefore the conference is not a strong conference. Well, guess what? The Big Ten has a ton of teams ranked in the top 25 with no logical reason for it. So when you say they've beaten a top 25 team, what top 25 team did they beat? Oh, they beat each other? None of them should be ranked this high.
Exactly. And look at this Michigan State schedule and compare that with Cincinnati. What's the difference between how are they number 3
right
and Cincinnati falls? And if you look at Cincinnati's schedule, what has they done different?
Cincinnati beat Notre Dame at Notre Dame.
Right.
At Notre Dame. And we all know that the College Football Playoff Committee loves Notre Dame. And they created a horrible, horrible, horrible precedent when they basically said if Notre Dame goes undefeated or loses 1 game, they are highly considered to be a College Football Playoff team.
Right.
By the way, America, when you let in Notre Dame when they went 12-0 and they barely beat Ball State, barely beat Vanderbilt. Their only two big wins came against an injured Eric Dungy Syracuse team and a Florida State team that had fallen off the map. Nobody else did they win convincingly. And what was I told? Well, on paper, USC's usually good. And, okay, well, on paper, Syracuse was good during Paul Pasqualone's era on Coach Mack.
Right.
On paper, a lot of things. On paper, the Dallas Cowboys should have won 9 Super Bowls. 12. On paper, Tom Brady should have never been a starting quarterback in the NFL. Because he was a backup in Michigan. Maybe that's why Michigan's in the top 10, because Tom Brady won Super Bowls and he went to school there. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the reality of it all to me is you cannot sit here and tell me these Big Ten teams are good, let alone top 10 good, when they've done nothing but play unranked teams, and the only team that they played that's ranked was in their conference, and they were ranked because the committee likes them.
Right. It's just weird odds that, you know, we got this many number of teams ranking. Okay, by the way, we just want to leapfrog each other back and forth.
Right.
You know, and it's almost kind of SEC-ish, you know, too. It's like,
you think Michigan State's better than Iowa?
Who?
You think Michigan State's better than Iowa? For goodness sakes, Iowa was, you know what I mean? Like, Iowa was the darling of the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. They were like the saving grace of the Big Ten. Let me be real with you folks. If you're a Big Ten fan, and I would say this about any conference, I'm saying what the truth is. You know deep down in your heart of hearts that if you're a Big Ten fan or you're a Notre Dame fan, that this committee has your back.
Yeah.
You know that. Okay? If it was the ACC, if it was the SEC, you know that. Okay, you know that. But the difference between the SEC and the Big Ten is the SEC's earned it. The SEC's, Georgia's, and Alabama's, and Auburn's, they've proven it. LSU's, they've proven it. Send Michigan State to the college football playoff. I'll be happy to watch that game. I would legitimately rather watch the Teletubbies fight the Wiggles in a battle to the death on WWE.
The Teletubbies and who?
And the Wiggles.
Okay.
I would rather watch Barney sing I Love You, You Love Me, followed by Lamb Chop's Play Along, than watch Michigan State in the college football playoff. Just because you tell me that Michigan and Michigan, you say it's the battle of two top 10 teams. No, it's the battle of two teams you ranked in the top 10 that don't deserve to be there. That's who it is. You're going to tell me Cincinnati now and last year, and UCF of a couple of years ago, if Michigan and Michigan State this year are top 10 teams, then Cincinnati and UCF, if you take this Cincinnati and the recent UCF team, then those teams should have been in top 5.
Exactly, easily. So what are the team that, if you're not in those power conferences, going to do to get in the playoffs?
Right.
Because literally, you can do everything you can do possibly, beat some named teams, and still don't get the respect to be put up there. And by the way, the team you just clicked on, you know, you having an outstanding year. You in one of those power conferences, and God forbid you're not the Florida States, you're not the Miami, you're not the North Carolina on the Mac Brown, you're not the Clemson, but you're having a damn good year, and look where you fall at, you know, barely in the top 10. And I'm speaking of Wake Forest.
And I wish that Wake Forest was playing Notre Dame this year. Mm. I wish that Wake Forest was playing Notre Dame this year. Because Notre Dame is still in the conversation. Like, they're still in the conversation. What has Notre Dame done? Seriously. What have they done?
Let any team in a power conference lose. Not saying that Cincinnati is bad, but if anybody else took that L, they lost to Cincinnati. Yeah.
Cincinnati drops in the polls when they win.
Unfortunately, yes.
Notre Dame rose in the polls. Cincinnati beat Notre Dame, and Notre Dame is still a top. Notre Dame is a top 10 team right now. 7-1. They're a top 10 team right now. Right now. I would put literally, comfortably, my alma mater, Marywood University's team in D3 against Notre Dame right now. And they don't have a football team. Notre Dame
Haha, joke's on you.
jumps on you. We undefeated. And, so if we undefeated at 0-0, we should be rising in the polls. Let me tell you something about Notre Dame. Barely beat Florida State this year. Florida State a good team?
No.
They beat Toledo by 3. Toledo a good team?
No.
They beat Purdue. How Purdue doing?
No.
Okay. They beat Wisconsin. Where Wisconsin at?
Yeah, falling off the map.
Okay. They lost to Cincinnati by double digits at home in South Bend. And they barely beat Virginia Tech on the road, who Syracuse beat.
Yeah.
Oh, and they play USC, and USC ain't been ranked since what? Since Reggie Bush was there?
Right.
Okay. And they beat North Carolina, who just lost to Florida State again. So Notre Dame, you beat I don't care, and then you lost to Cincinnati.
Exactly.
But you're a top 10 team, in whose world?
Exactly. And who do you have left to play that still prove that you still belong on that?
You're gonna play Navy at home. Navy's been struggling, especially defensively. You're gonna play at Virginia. Virginia's got some good stuff. We'll see. You got Georgia Tech, who's still working through the Jeff Collins era to change out of the triple option. And you have at Stanford. And you know what Notre Dame fans are going to tell me? You know what people that are behind Notre Dame that drink the Kool-Aid, you know what they're going to tell me? These are the same people that don't care that their gas is $3.50. This is what these people are going to tell me. They're going to say, Dan, historically, Stanford, USC, Wisconsin, Purdue, historically, have had strong programs. And Florida State, Dan, if you remember, had Jameis Winston and Delvin Cook. Yeah. And you know what I'm going to say to you? I don't give a poop about history. We're talking about right now.
Exactly.
And I will tell you what I've said before, and I'll say it again, and I've said it publicly, live, on site, on location at Pizza Man Pub, with Off the Rails with Al, with my guy Al Romano, who won a championship with Pittsburgh, CNY native. If Notre Dame's a top 10 team based on history, then so is Syracuse.
Exactly. There's no difference.
And I'm going to take Syracuse's backs over your backs.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that schedule is no different than what Cincinnati has to go through, and it's nothing really challenging, but they're barely winning,
Right.
They're not dominating anybody.
No.
It's just a name.
You barely beat Florida State by 3. Barely beat Toledo by 3. Won against Purdue by 14. You blew out Wisconsin, who was ranked at the time. You lost to Cincinnati. You barely beat Virginia Tech. You beat USC by 15, and you had a shootout with North Carolina where there was a total of 78 points scored.
They're going to lose against UVA.
I think they're going to lose to Virginia too.
And that's just going to.
When I saw it, this is the first thing I thought. By the way, in the independent world, BYU and Liberty have as many wins as, you know what? I'm going to say this, Notre Dame. Okay. I'm going to say, and again, I would say this about anybody, so don't come at me because you're a Notre Dame fan. I'm just talking about people who have who have preferential treatment.
Right.
I'm just talking about double standards. This very easily could be any other conference, any other team. This is what I'm going to tell you, Notre Dame fans. I want you to listen. I want you to escucha, okay? I want you to listen, get low to the ground. I want you to hear me from here to South Bend. I believe, in my heart of hearts, that you're better than UMass and UConn. We're also independent. So if this was a conference, I'm confident that you could beat UMass and UConn.
Right. That's it? In that conference?
Oh, no. In the independent conference, I think Liberty would give you a run for your money, and I think BYU will too.
I think Army might.
And I think Army could.
Yeah.
Yeah. But besides that,
yeah.
Listen, if you're barely beating Toledo at home, I would love to see you play BYU, Liberty, and Army this year. I would love to see it. Because those teams are going to be grasping at straws trying to get some reputable bowl game that isn't named after some, beef or, fruit snack or cheese-covered something. And you're going to be playing in a friggin' New Year's Six Bowl.
Yeah, just because of name.
Just because of your name. And that, to me, is a travesty. Because Cincinnati, there's two massive hits in the college football playoff rankings, the initial rankings. There's two biggest punches that show the cards of the college football playoff. And I'd rather Gary Barta and the committee just come out and say, I would rather them just come to their meeting, unbutton their shirts, and have a shirt that says Big Ten Notre Dame no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather you just say, we don't give an F about the American. We don't care about the Sun Belt. I'd rather you say that. Because the two biggest the two biggest illogical, irrational moves. If you ever dated a girlfriend or a boyfriend that started screaming and pulling their hair out, did you ever date somebody that didn't have eyebrows and they had to dry them on, put them on their face every day? I did.
Oh.
And if you ever dated someone who had to put their eyebrows on every day, I would trust them over the college football playoff committee. Two biggest blunders of this. Cincinnati is number 2 in the AP and number 2 in the coaches poll. The media thinks Cincinnati's the second best team in the country. The coaches think Cincinnati's the second best team in the country. And that's something that has not happened ever of them in the American. In the college football playoff rankings, doesn't think that they're the second best, third, fourth, fifth. They put them from 2 to 6. 2 to 6. Why? Because if Cincinnati wins all their games, and Cincinnati does all this stuff, because they love Notre Dame, they'll let Notre Dame leapfrog Cincinnati if Notre Dame goes 11-1. And not even plays they can't even play in a conference championship because they don't have one. Because they're independent. Cincinnati, I'm telling you right now, and I've said this for years, the college football playoff rankings, they come out with their initial rankings of their top 25, and they set it up mathematically that they know that they can keep Cincinnati at 6, even if they win, or put them to 5, and say that they were the last team out or the second to last team out. If everything else, they've set themselves up that if things stay status quo, or if Michigan wins out, or Oklahoma wins out, or Wake Forest wins out, or Notre Dame wins out, they've made it, by putting Cincinnati at 6, they can now argue in their mind, mathematically, that Cincinnati doesn't belong.
Right.
Now, if they put them at 2 and Cincinnati went undefeated, they couldn't argue it, which is why they didn't do it. The other travesty is that in the other two polls, Coastal Carolina at 7-1 is ranked. They lost to Appalachian State, who, no offense, has beaten the crap out of the Power 5.
Well, yeah, not a bad program.
No. It's not like a team that won one game. And get this, they lose a coach, they do it again. UCF's done that. Okay? Memphis has done that. Coastal Carolina is not even in the top 25. Not even a lick of them in the top 25 for the college football playoff rankings. Yet, they're in the AP's top 25 at 21, and they're 21 in the coaches poll as well. So the two biggest travesties to me is how is the second best team in the nation 6th to the college football playoff committee, and how is Coastal Carolina not even considered to be in the top 25?
So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this whole college football playoff rankings work their way out, because eventually it's going to run into the Georgia, Alabama situation in the SEC.
So what happens if Alabama loses to Georgia? You want to know what I said? What I've always said? There's only one team in the nation that can lose 2 games and get the college football playoff. Their name is Alabama.
Right.
The SEC, Alabama can lose 2 games. Only team in the nation of 130 Division I-A FBS teams. Only Alabama can lose 2 and get in. Clemson can lose 1 and get in. There's other teams, that Florida, Georgia, that can lose 1 and get in. If Alabama loses 2 games and the second game they lose is in the SEC championship to Georgia, I guarantee you that if they don't make it, they're still above Cincinnati.
Yeah. And that's the thing that's so ashamed about
They'll
it.
be 5 and Cincinnati will be 6.
Alabama can lose won't even be a conference champ and still with 2 losses be respected.
How about Auburn? Auburn beat Georgia and Alabama. Alabama didn't even play in the conference championship game that year in the SEC. They were watching the game, and they got picked above Auburn to play in the college football playoff.
Yeah.
You might as well just do it like this. The college football playoff should say at the beginning of the season, Alabama has a spot. There's another. They should say it's Alabama, SEC ? Notre Dame, and open.
Right. Everybody else. Exactly. And that's why I say, I mean, the playoffs to me is just 4 slots. I think they need to expand it to give more opportunity to the other conferences. Yeah. And if you're going to play this game, like I told you in the beginning, let's just open it up for everybody. There's no conference. If you bad enough to play big boy against big boy,
Yeah.
Let's meet on the field and settle it on the field, and then
Hey, Michigan
at the
State.
end of the season. Yeah.
Michigan State. Play Appalachian State. Play Coastal Carolina. Play SMU. Play Cincinnati. And then why don't you go ahead and play Wake Forest and play Louisville at Louisville and play Pittsburgh. And then tell me how you're doing.
Right.
Because your crap season has given you a top 3 ranking. You're 8-0, and seven of those 8 teams were unranked, and the only team that was ranked was Michigan, who didn't deserve to be.
Exactly. Way inflated.
You know? So the thing is, but again, you set yourself up. If Michigan is a top 10 ranked team, you've inflated and told the nation that's a top 10 win. But that's not. No. If Jim Boeheim was sitting here right now and he was looking at teams making it into the NCAA tournament over him, you think he wouldn't turn around and say to you, Duke won 18 games, Indiana won 19 games. The year that was Syracuse won 20 games, and Duke had won 19, or Indiana won 19, Duke won 18, and they both got in over Syracuse. And not only did they get in, they were like 7 and 8 seeds. If they're going to get in on those records above Syracuse, they should have been playing games.
Right, exactly. Not
they should have been 15
level.
Seeds.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So it's like, call it what it is. Just come out and say, Alabama's in. There's another SEC team, probably Georgia, that's in this year. And we're going to put a Big Ten team in, and we're going to consider Oregon. Just come out and say, Cincinnati, you have no shot.
Right.
Just say it. Just say it. Because Cincinnati, being ranked in the nation's top 2, I was stunned that the coaches and the media gave them any type of credit. And then the college football playoff comes out and tells the coaches and the media, we think that you're way off on Cincinnati. Let me ask you this question. Would the college football playoff ever take a two ranked Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Oregon, or Notre Dame and move them out of the top 4?
Not in your life. You would never see something like that happen. Not in our lifetime.
How do you take, you know what I mean? Normally, the college football playoff comes out and it's snake eyes to the AP or the coaches poll or both. Usually their top 4 is the top 4.
Right.
Or the top 4 of the 5.
Right. And
your number 2 team is 6.
And even when it's comparable, it usually still plays itself out.
Right.
Now you say it's already, like you say, it's already set up, predetermined.
It's by putting Cincinnati at 6, it is set up for Alabama to lose 2, drop to 4, a Big Ten team rise, and if Oregon wins out, to stay.
Right.
I'm telling you, I've literally 7 weeks in advance, I've done this before. I've mathematically stated that UCF at 10, 9, 8, I said by putting them at 9 to start the college football playoff, they're not going to move them up 5 spots. So by putting UCF a few years ago when they were undefeated at 9 or 10, I said there's no way in hell that they're going to argue them up 5 or 6 spots from the American. So they've set them up that they're going to say, hey, UCF, you should be proud you got to 5. You should be proud.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? So Cincinnati, this ain't no thing. This ain't no thing. And Cincinnati, let me just paint you a picture because I respect the you-know-what out of you from day 0, okay? Covered you for almost a decade. So from 2013 to now, 2012, even before that, because you were in the Big East. Let me tell you something, Cincinnati. If you think that the Big 12, without Oklahoma, who's the only team that the committee gives a crap about, if you think that a sans Big 12, or a Big 12, sans Oklahoma and sans Texas, if you think that leaving the American and joining the Big 12 is going to get you a better shot at the college football playoff, you're smoking something.
Well, yeah. Look at Texas and Oklahoma. They're ready to jump the SEC. So why are you going to jump on the train they just jumping off of? So, yeah, that's not going to work.
Cincinnati joining the Big 12 is not going to get you. If you were in the Big 12 right now, you would not be in the college football playoff. Where's Oklahoma right now?
Exactly.
They're 8. They're 8. And they're 9-0. They got one more win than you do. They got one more win than you do. And I think Oklahoma would beat the crap out of Notre Dame. So, Cincinnati, you're going to jump ship and join the Big 12. And UCF's going to jump ship and join the Big 12. In the last 5 years, 6 years, both of you deserve to be in the college football playoff. And I'm telling you right now, being in the Big 12, you don't have a better look at it.
No.
Your angle is going to be, it's going to look a little bit better, but you're still going to hit the same wall.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like two diagonal roads pointing at the same brick wall.
If Oklahoma is 8 now,
yeah,
there's no way in the world you're going to improve your chances.
The only way that the American gets the respect that they deserve is if they make this thing 12. Mm-hmm. So expand it to 12, and you'll put 7 SEC teams in there.
Basically, yeah.
If it was 12 right now, this season, because you can't put Florida in and whatever.
Right.
If it was 12 right now, Georgia, Alabama, Auburn, Texas A&M would all be in.
Yeah.
They would argue Ole Miss. So you got, what, 4? You got 4 or 5? So I said, what did I say? Auburn, Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia. So you put those 4 in from the SEC. Fair-wise. Because I think Texas A&M, I think Georgia and Alabama, they deserve to be in. If it was 12 right now,
right,
they deserve to be in.
Right.
We could talk Auburn and Ole Miss, but they deserve to be in. So that's 3, right? Mm-hmm. Cincinnati and the American, they deserve to be in. So that's 4, right? Then you got, and this is not me going 1 through 12. This is me just throwing them out at you.
Right.
Okay. Oregon deserves to be in. So that's 4. That's 5.
5. Yeah.
So you got 5 in. Then Wake Forest this year deserves to be in. That's 6. And then it's a free-for-all. Because I can't...
Save me some.
Huh?
Save me some.
Yeah, save me some. Because
Notre Dame's going to be in.
Well, I know that. But I'm talking about right now who deserves it.
Yeah.
I got half the field picked. And that still gives you the opportunity to load the field with the Big Ten and Notre Dame. If it was 12 right now, you could still be fair to Cincinnati and Wake Forest and still be a dick about it.
Right.
Can I say dick about it? It's my show. Can I say
sure,
dick?
sure. Yeah.
Right. Can I say they're being dicks about it?
Yeah.
The show's brought to you by Dick Sporting. I mean, can I say? But but let's be real. If there was 12 right now, you could put the teams in that deserve to be there and still be irrational, illogical, and still pad your pockets with Big Ten and Notre Dame money. Mm-hmm. But there's 4 spots.
Yeah.
There's 4 spots. And there's 4 SEC teams that I can argue, plus Cincinnati, plus Oregon. There's not enough spots for you to be fair.
No, definitely.
So you being unfair in a world where there's not even enough spots to be kind of fair is telling me 2 things. Number 1, the College Football Playoff Committee's got the wrong people. Number 2, Gary Barta, the head of the committee, is linked to the Big Ten. Number 3, Notre Dame is not good because of 100 years ago. Number 4, there's not enough spots. And number 5, who in the hell is afraid of the Big Ten?
Yeah.
You think the SEC, you know what? Why don't you just merge the Big Ten and the SEC and watch them all look like Arkansas normally,
Exactly.
Tennessee, Michigan State in the Big Ten would be 1-8 right now.
Right.
Or I'm sorry, Michigan State in the SEC. That's what I meant.
Yeah, I got
Michigan
you.
State in the SEC would be 1-8 right now. Iowa? Okay, put Alabama and Iowa in the same division. Why don't you put Jim Harbaugh, who cannot beat his rivals on a yearly basis? Why don't you put Jim Harbaugh against Jimbo Fisher in Texas A&M? Put him against Jimbo Fisher, Texas A&M. Put him against Coach O right now at LSU.
Right. Yeah.
Right now when they're not doing great. Put him against Nick Saban in Alabama. Put him against Mike Leach at Mississippi State. Put him against the Lane Train in Ole Miss. And he's not winning any of those games.
Not one.
I want the 4 best teams in the nation. Right now, those teams are Georgia, Alabama, Cincinnati, and I would probably argue Oregon.
Right. Yeah, because head-to-head, Oregon already beat the Big Ten.
Ohio State.
Yeah.
They beat the best Big Ten team.
Yeah, exactly.
Ohio State's the best Big Ten team. Ohio State is the best Big Ten team. Ohio State is the best Big Ten team. And That's not me saying a lot, because if it was my choice, they'd be 6th, and they'd be ranked 6th.
Mm-hmm.
As the best team in the Big Ten, they're not in my top 4.
Right.
They're not. And thank gosh darn it that at least if the committee was going to do anything fair, they did what America seemingly can't do in the AP and the Coaches Bowl, which is put Oregon above the team that they beat,
Exactly.
Ohio State. They're both 7-1, and head-to-head they won. If this was a division in the NFL, you would be above.
Exactly.
If this was a division and Oregon and Ohio State were both in the Big Ten, Oregon would be above them. Same record, tiebreaker. Oregon is 4, and Ohio State is 5 in the college football playoff. In the AP, it's the other way around, 6 and 7. In the coaches poll, Ohio State's 2 above Oregon.
Makes no sense.
In what world is the team that beat you that has the same record not better than you?
Makes no sense.
So just say what it is. You're on the Big Ten and Notre Dame's jock, and you've got to give the SEC their due because they make the most money. And if the SEC formed their own NCAA division, it would be the most watched thing in college football.
Yeah.
So the College Football Playoff Committee cannot piss off the SEC. But underneath the SEC and their prowess, it's Big Ten and Notre Dame. So just say that.
Exactly.
Just say that.
Yeah, exactly what it is.
And just keep boring the hell out of all of us. Keep making us watch Notre Dame play in the college football playoff. Keep making us watch that frickin' travesty of a game.
Mm-hmm.
My question to Cincinnati and UCF, why they shouldn't be in there in the last 5 years, can you score less than 0? Because Ohio State scored 0.
Right.
Can you be blown out more than Notre Dame? Like, if UCF lost to Alabama 45-21, how is that worse than Notre Dame? If Cincinnati lost 30-0, how is that worse than Washington?
Exactly. And you don't even give those guys an opportunity to even prove themselves on that stage. And that's the bad thing about it.
And you know what people would say to me before this season? All right, Dan, you think that Cincinnati deserved the 4th spot over Notre Dame last year in the college football playoff. Well, guess what? They should play head-to-head to prove it. Oh, they did this year.
Yeah.
In South Bend. And it wasn't a last-second victory that Notre Dame's had against all these unranked teams. It was Cincinnati going away with it. Mm-hmm. Cincinnati winning by double digits on the road over Notre Dame. And you think that Notre Dame and Cincinnati are this close. You think this is what separates them. What does Cincinnati have to do? Do they have to play Alabama, Georgia, Oregon, and Ohio State, and Michigan every year, and Oklahoma every year? Do they need to be an independent and schedule that? Because guess what? Notre Dame's an independent, and they don't schedule those games.
Exactly.
Notre Dame doesn't play Alabama. Notre Dame doesn't play Georgia. Notre Dame doesn't play Michigan State. Notre Dame doesn't play Oregon. Notre Dame is probably never going to play Cincinnati again. So if Notre Dame doesn't have to do it and they're not in a conference, don't tell me that the American Athletics Conference isn't quality enough when Notre Dame doesn't even have a conference, because that null and voids your argument.
Right. They get to choose and pick who they pick.
You have to play in a tough conference. Notre Dame doesn't play in a conference. You have to play ranked teams. Notre Dame doesn't play ranked teams. You got to beat the teams that you play that are ranked. You got to beat them convincingly. Notre Dame doesn't do that. Notre Dame's best win last year was against a team in double overtime at home in South Bend against a backup quarterback in his second start. And then when you played a healthy Clemson, they blew you out.
Right.
And what did Gary Barta say about why he put Notre Dame in? He said they had a quality win against Clemson. Who they also had a loss to.
Right.
And their quality win was barely winning in double overtime at home against a backup quarterback, who, by the way, is not playing good this year.
Right.
Clemson's not even in the top 25 in any poll. Clemson's not in the AP, the coaches, or the college football playoff rankings. And they have the same quarterback that beat Notre Dame last year.
Right.
Or, pardon me, that almost beat Notre Dame last year.
Right. And you gave them credence over that victory to justify their spot.
Right. How do you say to me they have their best win is against a team that they lost to?
That means you did take no consideration that Trevor Lawrence wasn't even in the lineup. Right. You just said, all right, yeah, they got this win over.
And then what have you done for me lately? They lost the most recent game.
Mm-hmm.
If Cincinnati lost the first week of the season, they wouldn't be in the college football playoff. If Cincinnati beat Notre Dame and then lost to Notre Dame the last week of the season, they'd be 16th in the polls. So just call it what it is. You take care of the Big Ten, you take care of Notre Dame, and the SEC takes care of itself. And to everybody else, it's middle finger unless you're Clemson in any normal year.
Right. God forbid anybody else can come up. But yeah. Exactly.
Wake's about to get woke.
Yeah.
When they go potentially undefeated, win an ACC championship, and don't even get into the top 6.
Yeah.
But you know what, Wake? You'll probably pass Cincinnati. Maybe you'll be 5, and they'll be 6. But of course, Ohio State's sitting right there at number 5 for no apparent reason. The Big Ten's wins against top 25 teams are against teams in their conference that are in the top 25 that don't deserve to be there.
Exactly.
Again, who is scheduling? Don't tell me that Cincinnati needs to schedule Alabama and Georgia. They've scheduled the Pac-12, and what have people said? Woe is UCLA.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about that, there's nobody else in any of the power conferences in their non-conference schedule that's scheduling to prove themselves.
No, Clemson's playing Citadel last year and winning 77-7 and sitting Trevor Lawrence for half the game.
Yeah.
You know, Notre Dame doesn't play. I'm about to say something that's going to make the internet break. Notre Dame doesn't play a tough schedule.
No, and they're afraid to join the ACC. They took that, test last year, and they were like, "Oh no, we don't want any of this."
Right. But I mean, look at your schedule, Notre Dame. Look at your schedule. You played 2 ranked teams this year, and you lost to one of them, and the other one you beat doesn't even deserve to be there in Wisconsin. This is the same schedule that kept Cincinnati and UCF out of college football playoff when they were told that they only played 1 or 2 ranked teams a season.
Mm-hmm.
And that the rest of their schedule was against unranked teams. This is what they said to Cincinnati last year. You didn't play enough ranked teams, and your conference wasn't strong enough, and a lot of your conference wasn't ranked. This is what they said to Cincinnati. This is what they said to UCF. This is what they said to Boise State. Yet Notre Dame gets away with it every single year.
Right.
Call a spade a spade. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Whatever friggin' cliche line you want to use. Maybe Cincinnati should have a movie called Trudy.
Looking at the schedule, they should be undefeated. They should win out. And when you lose a game on this schedule, that should be it for you.
Right.
Their schedule is set up for success for those guys. Right.
Notre Dame, you who are you playing?
Right.
And Cincinnati, because look at Cincinnati's schedule. They play 1 ranked team. Okay, because SMU is just ranked.
Right.
But now they're not ranked in the college football playoff rankings. Of course they're not, because they're in the American.
Right.
But SMU is a giant killer. When Memphis, Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF are good in the American, SMU is the team that you don't want to play.
Right. They're the spoilers.
Right. And so is Temple. Temple plays spoiler all the time too.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's just it's crazy to me. In Tulsa and Tulane, FYI, Tulsa brought Oklahoma State to the brink last year in a 16-7 game, and Tulane played Oklahoma to the wire in Oklahoma, and Oklahoma won because Tulane didn't move the ball on their last drive with 2 minutes left in the game when they had the ball to win the game.
Right.
Tulane had the opportunity and didn't win, so Oklahoma got one at home against Tulane that took everything they possibly had to win the game. But again, nobody.
Let's see how it shakes out, man. Like I say, this is the first one, but yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying and how it's stacked already against Cincinnati. Where is it? How is Cincinnati going to overcome getting up those 2 spots? I don't even see it, unless just the wheels fall off on the teams ahead of them, which
that doesn't matter.
That's not going to happen.
If the wheels fall off, the committee.
You think they're going to jump them with?
If the wheels fall off, the committee will drag those cars with the hubcaps.
Right.
I mean, the reality of it all is, saying that Notre Dame barely won. This is Cincinnati against their unranked teams. Okay, pay attention to this with what I said about the Big Ten's Michigan, Michigan State, Wisconsin, as well as Notre Dame. Because they barely won some of these games. Cincinnati against Miami of Ohio, 49-14. Murray State, 42-7. Indiana, who's in the Big Ten, 38-24. Notre Dame, 24-13 on the road. Temple, 52-3. UCF, 56-21. Navy, 27-20. Tulane, 31-12. Their closest game this season was a touchdown. Closest game this season was a touchdown. Yet they're blowing out teams the way Alabama does, and they're not worthy of a top 4 ranking. And Notre Dame's winning 2 games against Toledo and Virginia Tech on field goals.
Right.
And scoring 32 points and allowing almost 30. Your defense isn't as good as Cincinnati. Your offense isn't as good as Cincinnati. They beat you head-to-head, and yet Cincinnati's the 6th best team in the country.
Makes no sense.
You know, somebody's drunk in the kitchen again. This has been the bye week blitz. Syracuse with 1 win away from becoming bowl eligible in the college football playoff with many steps away from being logical. Any final note?
I think we beat that one pretty good. You know, let's pray that Cincinnati can make a miracle. 'Cause I know how much you talked about that. You know, those guys getting their shot. You know what I'm saying? And
well, the thing
I think that's what everybody wants to see. I mean,
well, last year they were right there and they kept him out.
Right.
And now this year they responded by being better.
Exactly, and that's the point. Is
like if you tried to take the wind out of their sails and they came back.
Mm-hmm.
They came back even more electric.
Right. So when do we give those teams that respect? Because eventually, it's going to be, if you're not a named school, like you just ran down the list of everybody that's either being protected or taking care of themselves.
Yeah.
Then why are we watching? You know, why are we watching if you're not going to get a fair shake when you making your progress? You go to the coach, you're building your program to get to that level of the Cincinnati's, the UCLs of the world, and you don't get your shot, then what are we doing?
Well, it was like the year went 10-3 when Syracuse was ranked in the college football playoff rankings, and I said, oh, don't worry, because if by some chance they play in the ACC championship game, there's no way in hell that they would let Syracuse be in the top 4.
Exactly. And that's my point is, so why?
Like, Wake Forest knows that.
Right.
Wake Forest knows that they're not going to play in the college football playoff. They know that. They're going to play their hearts out, and Dave Clawson's an awesome coach, and he's made this program into something. But there's no way in hell that they're going to let them do that. They're going to put them in a New Year's Six bowl against a Big Ten. They're going to put them against Michigan and hope that Michigan beats them so that they can say that they're right.
Right. And
that's it.
Yeah. They definitely would do that. And that's why, but I want to see and have that argument. And because that's my argument for expansion.
Well, and the American Athletic has said, Mike Oresco, the commissioner who's been on the show a bunch of times, he said it. What else do you want? He said, look at our non-conference schedule that other teams won't play. There's certain teams that won't play us. Mm-hmm. And look at everything that we've done. Look at our record. Mm. And what do people say? Well, you played Kentucky, you didn't play Alabama in the SEC. Well, you played UCLA, but you didn't play Stanford in the Pac-12. Oh, well, I mean, it's like Cincinnati has played, whether win, lose, or draw, Cincinnati has played UCLA. They played Ohio State. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Nobody else has to do this. Nobody else has to play New Year's Six bowl games the second week of the season.
Right.
And you tell Cincinnati that you have to beat Notre Dame, and they do, and you still punish them.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll see. It's just
all I'm going to say is Cincinnati, if that check didn't clear yet for you to buy yourself out of the American Athletic Conference, you might want to call the bank and put a hold on it.
Right.
Because joining the Big 12 ain't going to be any better for you.
Right.
With that being said, for Isaac Alford, myself, Dan Tortora, for the fantastic work of the college football playoff, and for Syracuse being 1 away from a bowl season, all I'm asking for people to do is, if the games actually matter and you're supposed to beat the teams that are in front of you, just be fair to everybody.
Yes.
And Syracuse, you are in control of your bowl season, so play the games that are ahead of you. You have 3 chances to win 1 game, but don't look at it that way. Look at it like you have 3 chances to go 1-0.
Mm-hmm.
Because you end in the season 8-4.
That's something to talk about.
That's something. And that's what you should look for. 6-6 should be your worst season. Remember, Paul Pasqualoni was fired for doing that 2 years in a row after having 11 straight winning seasons.
Yeah.
Paul Pasqualoni had 1 losing season. 1 losing season. I think it was 4-8 or something like that. 1 losing season, 2 500 seasons, and the rest of the seasons were winning seasons. And he wasn't considered good enough to stay at Syracuse. So, all decisions are not always right. Hindsight is 20/20. And the College Football Playoff Committee can't even pick my cereal in the morning.